A poor little girl tries to wash the car of a young millionaire CEO for loose change. But when he takes a closer look, he asks, "Where did you get that bracelet?" Her answer leaves him stunned. The digital clock read 7:43 p.m. when Grayson Cole shut down his computer. His eyes were burning after hours spent staring at spreadsheets and contracts. The office was empty. Once again, he was the last to leave. He straightened his already loose tie, grabbed his suit jacket, and closed the door without looking back. Outside, the sky displayed a mix of orange hues. Another day just like all the others. Numbers, meetings, cold decisions. His life was so predictable that even the building's security guards made bets on the exact time he would leave. "Good night, Mr. Cole," the guard mumbled. Grayson merely nodded. He was known for his efficiency as CEO of Cole Enterprises, but also for his reserved nature. At 32 years old, he had built an empire, yet lived as though he were merely fulfilling a task. The path to the parking lot was the same as always, measured steps, eyes forward. That's when he noticed something different. On the corner, near where his car was parked, a small figure crouched down, washing the headlights of a car. It was a little girl, no older than 6, with brown hair tied into a messy ponytail. Her bare, dirty feet stood in a puddle of water as she scrubbed an old rag against the bumper. Grayson stopped. He wasn't the type to give a second glance to scenes like that. But something about this child made him hesitate. She wore a simple dress, far too big for her skinny frame. Her small hands worked with a determination completely disproportionate to her age. When she finished cleaning the car, the driver threw some coins on the ground before leaving. The girl scooped them up quickly, as though afraid someone might take them. That's when Grayson saw it. On her thin, delicate wrist, a bracelet made of colorful beads swung as she collected the coins. His heart sped up. Those beads, that pattern, it was exactly the same. His feet moved before he even realized it. He approached slowly. "Hello," he said, using a tone of voice he rarely used, kind, almost uncertain. The girl looked up, startled. She had large, expressive eyes, with a mix of innocence and a premature wisdom. "Hi," she replied, taking a step back. "There's no need to be afraid," Grayson said, keeping his distance. "I just wanted to ask, are you washing cars by yourself?" She studied him curiously, clutching the wet rag to her chest. "Yes, I'm helping my mom." Grayson nodded. Talking to kids wasn't part of his daily routine. "Do you want me to wash your car too?" the girl offered timidly. "I charge really cheap." An involuntary smile appeared on Grayson's lips. It felt strange. He barely smiled in board meetings, even when finalizing multi-million-dollar deals. "What's your name?" he asked. "Ellie," she answered, swaying slightly back and forth. "Ellie," he repeated, as though testing the sound. "My name is Grayson." She smiled more openly. "That's a nice name." For a moment, he just watched the girl. The bracelet kept drawing his attention, stirring memories he had tried hard to bury. "Where did you get that bracelet?" he finally asked, pointing to her wrist. Ellie looked at her own hand. Her eyes gleamed with pride. "My mom gave it to me. She said it's very special." Grayson felt a lump in his throat. He stepped closer, crouching to meet her eyes. His expensive suit touched the dirty ground, something the old Grayson would never have allowed. "May I see it up close?" In a surprisingly trusting gesture, Ellie held out her arm. The bracelet was made of beads in different colors, forming a unique pattern: blue, red, yellow, green, purple, repeating twice. And at the center, a white bead larger than the others. The world seemed to go dark around Grayson. This was no ordinary bracelet. It was identical to the one he had made for his younger sister, Amelia, almost 20 years ago. "Are you okay, sir?" Ellie's voice seemed distant. Grayson blinked several times. "Yes, I'm fine." His voice came out hoarse. "It's a very beautiful bracelet. Mom says it protects me," Ellie explained, "like a guardian angel." It was like a punch to the chest. Those were the exact same words his parents used to say to Amelia about the bracelet he'd made for her. "Your mom is right," he managed to say. "It really does seem special." A car horn blared from a nearby street, causing Ellie to jump. She glanced at the digital clock in a store window. "I need to earn a little more," she said with serious determination, almost comical. "Mom said to come home before it gets dark." "Where do you live?" Grayson asked, trying to sound casual. Ellie pointed vaguely. "Over by the corner store, in the green building." Grayson knew the area. A simple neighborhood with old apartment buildings, nothing like the luxury condo where he lived. "Do you want me to wash your car now?" Ellie asked again. Grayson stood up, feeling his legs tremble. "Sure," he replied, even though his car was spotless. As they walked toward his black Mercedes, Grayson couldn't take his eyes off the bracelet. "Wow, your car is really big," Ellie exclaimed, eyes wide. "It must cost a lot of money." Grayson gave a half smile. "It's just a car." Ellie looked at him as though he'd said something absurd. "It's not just a car. It's the nicest one I've ever seen." "Do you come here often to wash cars?" he asked as she dragged a heavy bucket back. "Not always," Ellie replied, starting to soak the side of the car. "Only when I can help. That way I save some money to buy fresh bread for breakfast." Something twisted in Grayson's chest. A child so young already worried about helping with household expenses. "Does your mom know you stay out here alone?" Ellie was quiet for a moment. "Kind of. She tells me to stay near home, but..." She paused, biting her lip. "But sometimes there's no food at home, and she gets sad." "What's your mom's name?" he asked, trying to remain casual. "Sarah," Ellie replied proudly. "Isn't that the prettiest name in the world?" Sarah, a common name that meant nothing to him. Grayson felt briefly foolish. What was he expecting? As he watched Ellie work, memories emerged like ghosts. It was a hot summer day. Amelia, only 3 years old, running around the backyard, the bracelet he'd made for her glittering in the sun. "Let's play, Gray. You promised." Her face was round and freckled, her eyes identical to his, shining with anticipation. "Later, Leah," replied his 11-year-old self, absorbed in his video game. "I'm almost beating this level." "But you promised," Amelia insisted, her tiny voice trying to sound serious as she tugged on his arm. "Just a little while." "Amelia, I said later." His voice came out more irritated than he intended. "Go play in the yard. I'll be there soon." She left, dragging her feet, pushing the screen door. He didn't even look away from the monitor. It was the last time he saw her. Hours later, panic, his mother's desperate screams, the police in the living room, the neighborhood searches that lasted days, weeks, months. They never found anything. Not a clue, nor the bracelet. Just the emptiness of a disappearance that was never resolved. "All done." Ellie's cheerful voice brought him back to the present. "It's really clean now, see?" Grayson looked at the car. There were a few streaks of water here and there, but she looked so proud that he smiled. "It's perfect," he said, pulling out his wallet. "How much do I owe you?" Ellie frowned, thinking, $2. That's what the other folks pay. Grayson took out a $20 bill. "I think it's worth more than that." Ellie's eyes went wide. "But I don't have change for that, sir." "You can keep it," Grayson said. "Hey, you worked hard." Ellie took the bill carefully. "Thank you, I'll buy bread and milk for Mom." She began gathering her supplies. Grayson watched her, knowing he should go, return to his organized life, but he couldn't make himself leave. "Ellie," he called softly, "will you be here tomorrow?" The girl thought for a moment. "I think so. I like helping earn money. Then maybe I'll come back for you to wash my car again," he said, smiling in a way he couldn't quite control. "I'll make it even cleaner," she promised enthusiastically. "See you tomorrow, Mr. Grayson." And with that, she ran toward the green apartment building across the avenue, the colorful bracelet swinging on her wrist. Grayson stood there for a long time, watching until she disappeared from view. Something had changed inside him during those few minutes, a spark of something he hadn't felt in years. Maybe hope. He needed to find out more about that girl, about her mother, about that bracelet. For the first time in many years, there was something more important in his life than spreadsheets and contracts. The next morning, Grayson woke up before his alarm. He'd slept poorly, dreaming about Amelia and the colorful bracelet. The image of Ellie blended with memories of his little sister, as though both were part of the same mystery he needed to solve. For a moment, he lay there, staring at the ceiling of his penthouse apartment. He was used to getting up immediately, following a meticulously calculated routine and diving into work to forget everything else. That was how he'd survived for the past 20 years, burying himself in spreadsheets, reports, and meetings, so he wouldn't have to think about the void Amelia had left behind. But today was different. Today, he had hope. He got up with an energy he hadn't felt in years. Instead of his usual rigid routine, black coffee, financial news, and report reviews, he got dressed quickly, not bothering to match his clothes with his usual perfectionism. He grabbed his car keys and headed to a nearby mall that opened early. At the supermarket, he filled his cart with items he never usually bought for himself: brightly colored juice bottles, chocolate cereal bars, fresh sandwiches, cookie packs, fresh fruit, and yogurt. The cashier looked curiously at the man in a tailored suit and luxury watch, buying what appeared to be snacks for a children's party. "Special day?" she asked, scanning the items. "Yes," Grayson answered with an involuntary smile. "I suppose it is." He arrived at the office almost an hour later than usual. His assistant, Miranda, looked at him with thinly veiled surprise. "Mr. Cole, is everything all right? You're never late." "I'm fine," he replied, feeling oddly light. "I just had a few personal matters to take care of this morning." By Miranda's expression, it was clear that the idea of Grayson Cole having personal matters was as unexpected as a penguin in the desert. He rarely spoke about anything unrelated to business. His private life was a mystery to everyone at the company. Throughout the day, Grayson tried to focus on work, but his mind kept drifting to Ellie and the bracelet. He actually forgot one of his meetings, something that had never happened before. He typed the wrong figures into an important report. He found himself gazing out the window, wondering where Ellie was at that moment, what she was doing, and whether she had enough to eat. At exactly 4 in the afternoon, ignoring a pile of documents awaiting his signature, Grayson got up, grabbed his jacket, and left. "Mr. Cole," Miranda called, nearly running after him. "What about the video conference with the Japanese investors? It's scheduled to start in 20 minutes. "Reschedule it," he said, not slowing his pace. "Something urgent came up. But sir, it took weeks to coordinate everyone's schedules. You always said these investors are a priority." Grayson stopped and turned to face her. "Miranda, for the first time in 5 years, I'm asking to reschedule a meeting. Please find another time slot, tomorrow morning if possible." The tone of his voice left no room for argument. With a nod, he continued on his way, leaving behind an utterly bewildered assistant. When he reached the corner where he had met Ellie the day before, he felt a mixture of anxiety and anticipation. What if she wasn't there? What if it had all just been a strange coincidence? To his relief, Ellie was already there, sitting on the sidewalk, drawing with a piece of chalk. As soon as she spotted Grayson's car, her face lit up like a tiny light bulb. She jumped to her feet and ran toward him, the colorful bracelet bouncing on her delicate wrist. "You came back," she exclaimed, as if she couldn't believe it. "Of course I did," Grayson replied, stepping out of the car with a bag of groceries. "I promised, didn't I?" Ellie smiled, but there was a shadow of doubt in her eyes, as though she were used to broken promises. "Most people say they'll come back, but they don't," she explained, with a sadness far too profound for her age. "The TV repairman said he'd come back to fix ours, but never did. The social worker too." A heavy feeling lodged in Grayson's chest. How could someone so young already experience such disappointment? "Well, I'm not like most people," Grayson said, crouching to meet her gaze. "When I promise something, I keep it, always. And I brought you some things." Ellie's eyes widened when she saw the bag's contents. Grayson offered her a small bottle of orange juice and a sandwich. She accepted them eagerly, but, to his surprise, tucked the sandwich into a torn pocket of her dress. "Aren't you hungry?" Grayson asked. "I am," she replied, "but I'm saving it for Mom. She comes home tired from work, and sometimes we don't have any food at our place." A lump formed in Grayson's throat. How could a child so young be so aware of life's hardships? "I have more sandwiches," he said, showing her the bag. "This one can be just for you. I'll make sure your mom gets plenty, I promise." Ellie hesitated for a moment, but hunger won out. She unwrapped the sandwich and took a bite, closing her eyes with delight at the taste. "Thank you, Mr. Grayson," she said between bites. "It's the best sandwich I've ever had." Something in the simplicity of her joy touched Grayson deeply. He had dined in Michelin-starred restaurants, eaten dishes prepared by famous chefs, and yet he had never felt even a fraction of the pleasure this little girl found in a simple supermarket sandwich. Over the following days, a routine emerged. Grayson would appear at the same time, bringing food and water. Ellie would wash his car her own way, splashing more water and soap around than actually cleaning, and then they would sit on the sidewalk and chat. At the office, people noticed the change. Grayson, always so predictable and methodical, now left punctually at 4 in the afternoon, regardless of what was happening. He delegated tasks he previously insisted on handling himself. His mood seemed lighter, less tense. "What's going on with the boss?" one manager asked Miranda. "He smiled at me today. I got scared." Miranda shrugged. "I don't know, but whatever it is, I hope it continues. He almost seems human." Gradually, between chocolate bars and sips of juice, Ellie revealed more about her life. Her mother, Sarah, worked any job she could find, cleaning houses, waitressing at events, delivering flyers on the streets. Sometimes, when she couldn't find work, they'd go days with little food. "Mom tries not to show when she's worried," Ellie said one afternoon, drawing with colored chalk on the sidewalk. "But I know when things are tough because she gets this wrinkle here." The girl pointed between her eyebrows. "And she only eats a little bit, saying she's not hungry, so there's more left for me." Grayson felt a growing admiration for this woman he had never met. Sarah must be extraordinary to raise such a sweet, thoughtful daughter under such difficult circumstances. "Has your mom ever thought about enrolling you in school?" Grayson asked one afternoon, watching Ellie draw simple figures with her chalk. The girl's face grew sad. "Mom always wanted to, but there's never enough money. The good schools cost a lot, and the others are really far away. They need a bunch of documents we don't have." "What kind of documents?" Ellie shrugged. "Not sure. Mom says it's complicated because she doesn't have all her papers either." The information seemed odd to Grayson, but he didn't want to push her. Instead, he asked, "Do you want to go to school?" Ellie's eyes sparkled. "More than anything in the world, I want to learn how to read stories, do math, and see other places on the globe." "Globe." "Globe," Grayson offered, smiling. "That's it," she exclaimed. "Mom showed me one in an old book we found. There are so many places in the world, you know. I want to see them all someday." Her enthusiasm for knowledge moved Grayson. If there was one thing money couldn't buy, it was that genuine thirst for learning, that pure curiosity about the world. The following evening, he not only brought food, but also a small educational kit. Notebooks, colored pencils, a basic reading primer, and a children's book about the world. "I found these at the bookstore near my work," he said casually, as if he hadn't spent his lunch break searching for the best early learning materials for children. "I thought you might like them." When he handed Ellie the supplies, he thought she might burst with joy. She hugged them as if they were the most valuable treasure in the universe. "Is all of this really mine?" she asked, incredulous. "All yours," Grayson confirmed. "And if you want, I can teach you some basics while we're here." "Like a real teacher?" Ellie asked, her eyes huge with excitement. "Exactly. Like a private tutor, just for you." "That would be the best present ever," she exclaimed, hugging the new notebook so tightly that Grayson feared she might wrinkle them. Over the next week, Their afternoons found a new purpose. After the symbolic car wash, Grayson would sit on the sidewalk with Ellie and teach her letters, numbers, colors, and shapes. She was an extraordinarily quick learner, absorbing everything with an impressive thirst for knowledge. "I've never seen a child learn so fast," Grayson remarked, genuinely impressed, after Ellie managed to write her full name by the third lesson. "Mom says I'm too smart for my own good," she replied with a proud smile, "but she's just kidding. She's happy when I learn new things." As the days passed, Grayson found himself thinking more about Sarah, this woman he didn't know but who, through Ellie, seemed extraordinary. Raising a child alone in such tough conditions, yet still instilling dignity and values. That was no small feat. But there was something else that intrigued him. The bracelet. Each day, seeing those colorful beads on Ellie's wrist strengthened his conviction that it was connected to Amelia. Over that same week of daily meetings, Grayson noticed changes in himself. He realized he was smiling more, caring less about small setbacks that once would have enraged him. He even caught himself humming in the shower, some old tune, something he hadn't done in years. In a board meeting, when one executive complained about a 2-day delay on a report, Grayson surprised everyone by saying, "It's just a report, not the end of the world. We have more important things to discuss." One morning, he passed by a toy store and impulsively bought a doll. It was simple, made of cloth, with yarn hair and a floral dress. Nothing like the fancy electronic toys modern kids usually want. But something about its simplicity reminded him of Ellie. When he gave it to her that afternoon, her reaction was even more emotional than he expected. Her eyes filled with tears, and she hugged the doll as though it were priceless. "I've never had a doll that was just mine," she explained, stroking the yarn hair reverently. "Only once when the neighbor's daughter let me borrow one." That night, lying in his king-size bed in his luxurious apartment, Grayson realized something he had ignored for years. Despite all his professional success, his life was empty. Meanwhile, Ellie, with almost nothing in material terms, had something he'd lost long ago: the ability to marvel, to find joy in simple things, to love freely. On Wednesday, Grayson arrived at the office with a firm idea. He needed to do something more concrete for Ellie and her mother. Bringing them food and little gifts wasn't enough. They needed stability, security, and more importantly, Ellie needed formal schooling. He spent the entire morning researching private schools in the area, looking for those that offered scholarships. Then, in a somewhat impulsive decision, he called an attorney specializing in family law. "I need information on how to help a child obtain school documentation when the mother doesn't have all her own documents," he explained. "It's a complicated situation." "Complicated how?" asked the lawyer. "I'd rather not discuss details over the phone. Can we schedule a meeting for tomorrow?" When he arrived at the corner that afternoon, Ellie was waiting for him with a sheet of paper in her hand. It was a drawing, herself, Grayson, and a female figure he assumed was Sarah, all holding hands, with a smiling son above them. "This is for you," she said proudly, handing him the drawing. "It's us, me, you, and Mom. Like friends." Grayson felt a warm, indescribable feeling in his chest. "It's beautiful, Ellie. I'll treasure it." During that day's lesson, Ellie was especially focused. She learned several new letters and managed to write small words. When they finished, she looked at Grayson with an unusually serious expression for her typically cheerful face. "Mr. Grayson, why are you helping me so much?" The question caught him by surprise. How to explain something he didn't fully understand himself? "Because I like you, Ellie," he replied honestly, "and because I believe every child deserves a chance to learn." Ellie studied his face for a moment, as if judging his sincerity. "Is that the only reason? Or does it have something to do with my bracelet too?" Grayson smiled, amazed by the girl's sharpness. It wasn't the first time he noticed how observant she was, picking up on details that most adults would miss. "You're very smart, you know that?" "Yes, the bracelet does intrigue me. It reminds me of someone who was very important to me." "Who?" Ellie asked, drawing a heart next to her name in her notebook. Grayson hesitated. He hadn't talked about Amelia with anyone in years. It was practically forbidden in the rare family gatherings. His parents had turned their pain into silence, preferring to act as if their younger daughter had never existed. It was easier that way. But somehow, there on the sidewalk with that curious little girl, it felt natural to share. "My younger sister," he finally answered. "She had a bracelet exactly like yours." "Your sister? She's an adult now, like you." Grayson felt that familiar knot in his throat. "I don't know, she disappeared when she was little, about your age. We never found her." Ellie's eyes widened, reflecting surprise and sadness. "She got lost. How did that happen?" "No one really knows," Grayson said, feeling the old weight of memory. "One day she was there, playing in the yard. The next, she was just gone. The police searched everywhere, but never found a single clue." "That's so sad," said Ellie, showing a seriousness beyond her years. "You must miss her a lot." "Yes," Grayson admitted, surprised by his own vulnerability. "Every day." Ellie was silent for a moment, as though processing this information. Then, in a move that took Grayson completely by surprise, she leaned in and hugged him. It was an awkward, childish hug, but filled with a genuine comfort he hadn't felt in years. "It's okay to be sad," she said with the simple wisdom of a child. "Mom says sometimes we need to cry so the sadness can leave our hearts and make space for good things to come in again." In that moment, sitting on the dirty sidewalk, embraced by a child he barely knew, Grayson felt something break inside him. A wall he had built around his heart began to crumble. And for the first time in 2 decades, he allowed himself to fully grieve his missing sister. One Friday, nearly 2 weeks after they started meeting daily, as they shared a package of cookies on the curb, Grayson finally mustered the courage to bring up the subject again. "Ellie," he began, choosing his words carefully, "that bracelet you wear every day, and it's really pretty." "Thank you," she replied, extending her wrist to show it off. "It's my most precious treasure." "You know," Grayson continued, feeling his heart rate climb, "I knew a bracelet just like yours. It belonged to someone very special to me." Ellie's eyes went wide with surprise. "Just like mine, with the same colors." "Exactly the same," Grayson confirmed. "Same beads, same order, blue, red, yellow, green, purple, with a bigger white bead in the middle." Ellie looked at her own bracelet, clearly fascinated by the coincidence. "That's so weird. How can 2 bracelets be so alike?" "That's what I'm wondering," Grayson said gently. "Who did the other bracelet belong to?" asked Ellie. "My sister, Amelia," Grayson replied. "I made it for her myself when we were kids." "You made it? How?" "Yes. I bought the beads at a craft store. My mom helped me make the cord and tie it. It was a birthday present for Amelia when she turned 3. I was 3 too when Mom gave me mine," Ellie exclaimed, growing more excited with each new coincidence. Grayson felt a chill run down his spine. Every new detail seemed to confirm his suspicions that there was a connection. "Ellie, has your mom ever told you where she got this bracelet? Who gave it to her?" The girl frowned, thinking hard. "I don't think so. She just says it's very special and protects me, like a guardian angel." The same words, identical to what his parents used to say about Amelia's bracelet. It was impossible to be just a coincidence. "Ellie," Grayson said, feeling he needed to take a next step, "could I meet your mom? Maybe I can help you both somehow. And I'd like to ask her about the bracelet." Ellie's face lit up like a little sun. "Really? You want to meet my mom? She's the best person in the world." "I'm sure she is," Grayson replied with a smile. "We can go now." Ellie jumped up. "She should be home." "Are you sure? Would she mind?" "Of course not. Mom always says friends are welcome, even if our place is small." There was something deeply moving in the simplicity of that response. In his corporate world, no one was welcome without a purpose or an agenda. Relationships were calculated, measured by what they could offer in return. Ellie's genuine openness was refreshing and strangely heartwarming. As they walked, Ellie held Grayson's hand firmly, guiding him through narrower, more run-down streets. The neighborhood was visibly poor, with old buildings, cracked sidewalks, and litter piled in corners. At another time in his life, Grayson might have felt out of place and maybe even apprehensive. But now, with Ellie's small hand firmly in his, he felt oddly at ease. At last, they stopped in front of a 4-story building with faded, peeling green paint. The front door was broken, held shut only by a piece of wire. "This is where we live," Ellie announced proudly, which contrasted with the building's run-down appearance. On the 3rd floor, they climbed narrow, dimly lit stairs. The steps creaked ominously, and the smell of mildew was strong. On each landing, they could hear TVs at full volume, crying children, and sometimes the sound of arguments. On the 3rd floor, Ellie ran to the next-to-last door and knocked excitedly. Mom, I brought a guest." There was a moment of silence, followed by the sound of soft footsteps approaching. The door opened just a crack, and Grayson saw a cautious green eye peering out. "Ellie, who's with you?" "It's Mr. Grayson, Mom, the one who brings me sandwiches and is teaching me to read," Ellie explained, pulling at the door so it would open wider. "He wanted to meet you." The door opened a bit more, revealing a young woman no older than 25. She wore simple, year-worn clothes, and her brown hair was tied back in a messy bun. There were dark circles under her eyes, signs of chronic exhaustion. Even so, there was a dignity in her posture and a subtle beauty that hard times had not managed to erase. Grayson felt like he'd been punched in the gut. Those eyes, they were exactly like his mother's, like his, like Amelia's. The shape of her face, the way she tilted her head slightly when uncertain, it was all strangely familiar and made his heart pound. "Ma'am, I'm sorry to drop by unannounced," he managed to say, mechanically extending his hand. "I'm Grayson Cole. I met Ellie a few weeks ago and—" His words died in his throat as their eyes locked directly. For an instant, it seemed she also felt something. A flicker of confused recognition crossed her face, quickly replaced by a cautious expression. "Ellie's been talking a lot about you," Sarah said softly but reserved. "Thank you for the snacks and the school materials. You didn't have to go through so much trouble." "It was no trouble," Grayson replied, still trying to regain his emotional balance. "Ellie is an extraordinary child." "Mom," Ellie interrupted eagerly, "Mr. Grayson knew a bracelet just like mine. It belonged to his sister who disappeared." Sarah seemed to freeze momentarily. Her gaze flicked immediately to Ellie's wrist, then back to Grayson, suddenly more alert. "Could we talk inside?" Grayson asked. "I promise not to take up too much of your time." There was a clear moment of hesitation. Sarah bit her lower lip, exactly the way Amelia used to whenever she was thinking, and then nodded, opening the door wider. "Come in," she said simply. The apartment was tiny, practically a single room divided by a makeshift partition. There was a small kitchen in one corner, a table with 2 mismatched chairs, and what appeared to be a single bed on the other side of the partition. Despite the evident poverty, the place was spotlessly clean and organized. "Have a seat," Sarah offered, indicating the 2 chairs. "I'll make some coffee." "No need to trouble yourself," Grayson said. "It's no trouble," she replied with a half-smile. "It's the least I can offer someone who's been so kind to my daughter." While Sarah prepared the coffee in the small kitchen, Ellie ran over to show Grayson her drawings taped to the wall. Simple, colorful sketches of a house, flowers, and what appeared to be her and her mother holding hands. "You draw very well," Grayson praised, genuinely impressed by her natural talent. Sarah returned with 2 cups of coffee and a glass of milk for Ellie. She sat at the table, her posture indicating a mix of gratitude and distrust. "So," she began, after a sip of coffee, "Ellie mentioned something about a bracelet." Grayson took a deep breath, now or never. "Yes," he said, indicating Ellie's wrist. That bracelet she wears is exactly like one I made for my younger sister nearly 20 years ago." Sarah grew very still. Something in her eyes changed, a flicker of fear, perhaps. "My sister, Amelia, disappeared when she was just 3, Grayson continued. We never found out what happened. The police investigated for years but found nothing. Not even the bracelet. The silence that followed was heavy with tension. Sarah stared at her coffee cup, as though looking at something beyond the dark liquid. "Mom," Ellie asked, noticing the change in the room, "is everything okay?" Sarah raised her eyes, first to her daughter, then to Grayson. There was an intensity in her gaze that wasn't there before. I'm not sure how to say this," she began, her voice barely a whisper, "but I think maybe we can help each other understand some things." The days following the DNA test were simultaneously slow and intense. The lab had said the results would be ready in 2 weeks, 14 days that dragged on like years. Sarah oscillated between anxiety and disbelief. Sometimes she convinced herself it was all just an extraordinary coincidence. Other times, she found herself staring at her own reflection, searching for features that might confirm Grayson's theory. Ellie, with the natural adaptability of children, accepted the situation with a disarming simplicity. To her, the idea that her mother might be her new friend's long-lost sister was just another adventure, not so different from the stories she read in the books Grayson brought her. As for Grayson, the weight felt almost painful. After 20 years believing Amelia was gone, the possibility that he'd found her was like a dream he was afraid to wake from. His analytical mind tried to protect him, listing all the reasons it could be just an incredible coincidence. But his heart, long dormant, had already fully embraced the hope. On the 3rd morning after the sample collection, Grayson surprised himself by making an impulsive decision, something entirely out of character. He called Sarah. "I was thinking, would you and Ellie like to go out this afternoon? There's a park near downtown with a duck pond." There was a moment's hesitation on the other end of the line. "I don't know, Grayson. Maybe it's not a good idea for us to see each other so often before we get the results." "I understand your concern," he replied, feeling a stab of disappointment. "But I thought we could use this time to get to know each other better, regardless of what the test shows." Another pause, then Sarah's gentle voice. "Ellie would love to see the ducks." The park was modest but well kept, with tall old trees offering plenty of shade. Ellie ran for the lake the moment they arrived, thrilled by the prospect of feeding the ducks with the bread Grayson had brought. "Careful not to fall in the water," Sarah called out, that instinctive motherly worry in her voice. While Ellie happily tossed pieces of bread to the ducks, Grayson and Sarah sat on a nearby bench watching her. A strange familiarity hung in the air, as if they had done this countless times before. "You look tired," Grayson commented. Sarah gave a small smile. "I haven't been sleeping well. Too many thoughts. I know the feeling. I've been dreaming about Amelia almost every night since we met." They fell silent for a moment, each lost in their own reflections. "What was she like?" Sarah finally asked in a near whisper. "Amelia." Grayson felt a lump in his throat. It was the first time Sarah had shown interest in his missing sister, who might actually be her. She was full of life. She had a laugh that seemed to fill the whole house. And she was curious about everything, always asking why, until she drove our parents crazy. Sarah smiled. "Ellie's like that. Sometimes I feel like I don't have enough answers for all her questions." Amelia also loved animals, especially cats. Right around when she disappeared, she kept asking for a kitten. "I'm afraid of cats," Sarah confessed, sounding surprised by her own admission. "I don't know why, but I always have been." "That's interesting," Grayson said, trying not to reveal the emotion he felt. Amelia had suddenly developed a fear of cats after being scratched by a neighbor's cat. "Bad experience?" "Not that I recall," Sarah replied, frowning. "It's just a feeling." That first outing, initially tense, marked the beginning of a new routine. In the days that followed, they met more and more often. At the office, Grayson's change in behavior was obvious. The man who was always first to arrive and last to leave now left promptly at the end of the day, often letting his team wrap up meetings. His closest employees noted that he smiled more, seemed less tense, even more patient. Some speculated he was in love. Others feared a health scare that prompted him to rethink his priorities. The truth, which no one at Cole Enterprises could imagine, was that their boss was rediscovering what it meant to have a family. One Sunday, Grayson took Sarah and Ellie to the zoo, watching with amusement as the little girl's excitement soared with each animal. When they reached the big cats area, Sarah instinctively backed away from the enclosures, looking uneasily at the lions and tigers resting in the sun. Grayson noticed and gently touched her arm. "We can skip this part if you want," he offered. Sarah looked at him, surprised by his thoughtfulness. "How did you know?" "You mentioned your fear," he said, shrugging. "It's not a big deal. There's plenty more to see." Ellie, who was a few steps ahead, ran back to them. "Mom's been scared of cats forever," she informed them with childlike frankness. "Even little kittens. It's the only thing she's afraid of." Sarah blushed. "Not exactly, Ellie. I'm also afraid of spiders and heights." "But cats are different," Ellie insisted. "You tremble whenever you see one." Grayson took in this information with an interest that went beyond casual curiosity. Sarah's fear of cats wasn't something he'd mentioned when telling her about Amelia. It was a new clue, something no one could have fabricated. On a Thursday, Sarah surprised him by inviting him over for lunch at her little house. "It's nothing fancy," she warned. "Just pasta with homemade sauce, but Ellie insisted you should try it." When Grayson arrived, the small home was even tidier and cleaner than usual. Wildflowers in a cup decorated the table, probably gathered by Ellie in some nearby lot. The smell of tomato sauce and herbs filled the air, creating a cozy atmosphere that contrasted sharply with his cold, impersonal apartment. "I helped with the pasta," Ellie announced proudly. "Mom let me stir the dough." "I'm impressed," Grayson said with a smile. "I'm sure it'll be delicious." The meal was simple but tasty. Sitting at the small table, chatting about trivial things, laughing at Ellie's detective cases in the building, Grayson felt something he hadn't experienced since childhood, a sense of belonging, of being exactly where he was meant to be. As he helped Sarah with the dishes, their hands brushed briefly, a small contact that sent a strange shiver through his spine. There was something in her touch that awakened buried memories, unnamed familiar sensations. "Sorry," Sarah murmured, pulling her hand away quickly. Her cheeks flushed a rosy hue that Grayson found inexplicably charming. "No problem," he said, suddenly feeling awkward, like a teenager rather than a seasoned businessman used to high-pressure negotiations. As the day drew near for the test results, everyone's anxiety grew. Sarah seemed more distant, as though emotionally bracing for disappointment. Grayson, on the other hand, had become almost obsessive, mentally reviewing every similarity, every coincidence, every detail linking Sarah to Amelia. Ellie, sensing the tension, tried her best to keep things light. On one of their outings, as they walked through the park, she took both Sarah and Grayson's hands. "If the test says you're brother and sister, does that mean you'll really be my uncle?" she asked Grayson. "Yes, Ellie," he said, gently squeezing her small hand. "I'd really be your uncle." "And if the test says you're not?" she pressed. Grayson looked at Sarah, who watched her daughter with love and apprehension. "Well, in that case," he began carefully, "we could still be friends, if your mom agrees, and friends are important too." Ellie thought about this for a moment, then nodded, apparently satisfied. "But I still think you're her brother. You have the same eyes." The evening before the 10th day since the sample was taken, Grayson called Sarah. "Would you like to go to the amusement park on Saturday? A new one just opened near the city. I thought Ellie might enjoy it." "She'll love it," Sarah replied, and he could hear the smile in her voice. "But it must be expensive. Please, let it be my treat." "Seeing Ellie's smile will be more than enough payment." Sarah hesitated a moment. "Grayson, I know it's hard, but we have to be prepared for the possibility that the test comes back negative." "I know," he said, feeling the weight of her words. "Believe me, I think about it all the time. But no matter what the results show, Sarah, these days with you and Ellie have meant a lot to me." There was silence on the other end, and for a moment Grayson feared he'd said too much. "They've meant a lot to us too," Sarah finally said softly. "I've never seen Ellie so happy, and You," Grayson encouraged when she trailed off. "I can't remember ever feeling so at peace. Like something that was missing finally came back." The amusement park was just as Grayson remembered from childhood, full of bright lights, music, and the smell of cotton candy and popcorn in the air. Ellie was over the moon, pulling them from one ride to another, her face a map of pure joy. "I want to ride the carousel," she cried, pointing to the colorfully painted horses spinning to the tune of an old song. While Ellie climbed onto a white horse with gold accents, Grayson and Sarah watched side by side. "She looks so happy," Sarah remarked, her face softened by emotion. "I've never been able to give her days like this." "You've given her something far more important," Grayson responded sincerely. "You gave her love, values, strength. She's an incredible child, Sarah. That's all you—" Sarah blushed at the compliment, looking away. "Thank you. I've always tried my best, even when it was tough." After the carousel, they went to the kiddie roller coaster. Ellie insisted that Grayson ride with her, while Sarah waited, smiling as she watched the normally serious businessman shriek alongside a group of children at each drop. "Do you really like her, don't you?" Sarah asked when Grayson returned, hair tousled and cheeks flushed with excitement. "Ellie? Of course, it's impossible not to like her." "It's more than that," Sarah persisted, her gaze penetrating. "It's like you truly care." Grayson felt exposed, vulnerable. "I do care. About both of you. No matter what the test says, Sarah, you two are already important to me." The moment was interrupted by Ellie, who came running over to ask to go on the swings. The swings were set in a quieter part of the park, away from the loud music and big crowds. Only a few parents and children were around, which made it feel almost intimate. "Push me, Uncle Grayson," Ellie requested, already seated on one of the swings, legs kicking in the air. Grayson positioned himself behind her and began to push gently. With each motion, Ellie's clear laughter filled the air. "Higher, higher!" she yelled, delighted by the sensation of flying. Sarah stood a little ways off, watching with a smile. There was something deeply comforting about seeing her daughter so happy and carefree. And something about Grayson, too. The tenderness with which he treated Ellie, the careful attention, the genuine joy he showed around them. It was hard to reconcile this man with the cold, assent calculating CEO she had first imagined. As she watched Grayson push Ellie, a powerful feeling of déjà vu began to well up, almost making her dizzy. The image before her seemed to overlap with another, like a double-exposed photograph. Instead of Ellie on the swing, she saw herself, maybe 3 years old, with pigtails. And instead of Grayson, there was a slightly older boy, perhaps 11, with the same gentle smile, the same green eyes. "Higher. Gray. I want to go higher." "Are you sure, Leah? You're still little." "No, I'm not. I'm big. I'm going all the way to the sky." The memory was so vivid, so real. Sarah brought her hand to her mouth, stifling a sob. It wasn't just a dream or fantasy. It was a genuine recollection, a fragment of a past she thought was irretrievably lost. Feeling shaky, she approached the swing. Tears were streaming down her face, but she hardly noticed. Her entire focus was on Grayson, on his face that now seemed so familiar, so loved. "You used to push me like this, didn't you?" she asked, her voice trembling with emotion. Grayson froze, his hands still on the swing's chains. He turned slowly to Sarah, eyes wide with surprise and hope. "What did you say?" he asked, almost breathless. "On the swing, when we were kids," Sarah continued, words spilling out between sobs. "You called me Leah, and I always begged to go higher." Grayson let go of the swing, leaving Ellie to sway on her own, and stepped toward Sarah. His hands trembled. "You remembered," he whispered in disbelief. "You actually remembered." Sarah nodded, unable to speak further. More memories flooded in, each bringing intense emotions, happiness, security, love. Feelings long buried, but never truly forgotten. Without thinking, Grayson pulled her into a hug. Sarah did not resist. Somehow, in his arms, she felt as though she were finally home. "Mom? Uncle Grayson? Why are you crying?" asked Ellie, who had hopped off the swing and now observed them curiously. Sarah pulled away, wiping her tears. "It's nothing, sweetheart. Mommy just remembered something important." "Something good or bad?" Ellie pressed. Sarah looked at Grayson, a smile forming through her tears. "Something good, Ellie. Something really, really good." 2 days after the park incident, Grayson showed up at Sarah's apartment carrying an old box. It was a Sunday morning, and the sunlight streamed through the simple windows, creating patches of light on the worn floor. Ellie was still asleep, curled under a thin blanket, unaware of the tension filling the air. "I brought something for you to see," Grayson said quietly, as though afraid of breaking the fragile connection forming between the past and present. Sarah glanced at the box apprehensively. Since that moment in the park, when a vivid memory had crashed over her, more recollections had surfaced, fragmented pieces of a jigsaw puzzle she still couldn't piece together fully. "What is it?" she asked, indicating the box Grayson placed on the small kitchen table. "Photos," he answered simply. "Family photos. Our family." The words echoed in the tiny apartment, carrying a weight that made Sarah shudder. It was strange to think she had a family beyond Ellie. During all these years, it had been just the two of them against the world. "I wasn't sure if I should bring them before we got the test results," Grayson continued, running a hand nervously through his hair. "But after that day in the park, I thought maybe it would help you remember." Sarah nodded, unable to find words. Her heart was pounding so hard it seemed everyone in the neighborhood might hear it. Grayson opened the box carefully. Inside, protected by clear plastic, was a brown leather photo album, its edges worn from time and frequent handling. "It's the family album," he explained as he took it out. "Mom keeps it by her bedside. Every night before sleeping, she looks at least at one picture of you." Sarah felt a knot tighten in her throat. The thought of someone spending 20 years looking at her photos, waiting for her return, was almost unbearable in its sweetness and sorrow. "She never gave up hope," Grayson went on, voice choked with emotion. "Neither did Dad. They never stopped searching. They never gave up on you." With trembling hands, Sarah took the album. It felt heavier than it looked, as if it carried not just photographs, but 2 decades of waiting and longing. "I don't know if I'm ready for this," she whispered, fingers tracing the leather cover. "We don't have to do it now," Grayson said gently. "We can wait until the results arrive." Sarah shook her head. "No, I want to see it." Taking a deep breath, she opened the album. On the first page was a photo of a smiling couple in front of a modest but welcoming house. The man, tall and broad-shouldered, had a kind smile and the same green eyes Sarah immediately recognized. Grayson's eyes. Her eyes. The woman, with dark hair and delicate features, held a baby wrapped in a blue blanket. "This is our dad, Thomas, and our mum, Elizabeth," Grayson explained softly, as though introducing something precious. "And that baby is you, not long after you were born." Sarah touched the man's face in the photo, feeling a strange tingling in her fingertips. At the back of her mind, a memory fought to emerge, the smell of aftershave and a deep laugh, strong arms lifting her high. "Dad," she murmured, the words sounding both strange and perfectly natural on her lips. Grayson nodded, watching her carefully. Sarah turned the page. The next photo showed a boy about 8 years old, holding a newborn baby. The boy looked at the camera with a mix of pride and amazement, as if he couldn't believe the tiny life in his arms. "That's me, the day you were born," Grayson said. "I was so happy to have a baby sister. I promised Mom and Dad I'd be the best big brother in the world." Sarah studied the childish face in the photo, looking for traces of the man sitting beside her. The same green eyes, the same gentle smile. Suddenly, Another memory surfaced. A boy patiently teaching her to tie her shoes, even when she messed up over and over. "You were," she said simply. "A good big brother, I mean." Grayson's smile wavered, and for a moment, Sarah thought he might cry. But he just took a deep breath and pointed to the next page. More photos followed, depicting an ordinary, happy family life. A little girl at her birthday party, blowing out candles with delight. The same little girl at the beach, building a sandcastle with her older brother. The four of them on a picnic, beaming as their mother sliced watermelon. As Sarah turned the pages, she felt like she was watching a movie of someone else's life. But it wasn't someone else, it was her, Amelia. The little girl in the photos, surrounded by love, was her. Suddenly, upon turning a page, Sarah froze. The photo showed a child's bedroom, painted in soft shades of green and yellow. A mobile of stars hung above a crib, and pictures of fairy tale characters adorned the walls. "That was your room," Grayson explained, watching her reaction. "Dad painted those fairies on the wall. You loved them." Sarah put her hand to her mouth, stifling a sob. Without warning, the smell of fresh paint and crayons flooded her senses. She could almost hear a gentle feminine voice singing a lullaby, feel the soft fabric of a blanket against her cheek as she drifted off to sleep. The smell of childhood, lost for so long, returned now with overwhelming intensity. "I remember this room," she whispered, tears spilling over. "The mobile. It made shadows on the wall when the light came in. I'd watch them until I fell asleep." Grayson nodded, too emotional to speak. The next pages showed more family moments. Christmas with a decorated tree, the whole family around the dinner table, outings at a park Sarah recognized as the same place where she'd had that flashback days before. "That's Golden Park, where we used to have picnics every Sunday in summer," Grayson said, pointing at the photo. "And this is Grandma Helen's house, where we spent every Christmas." Sarah ran her fingers over an image of an old house with a gabled roof and a wide porch. She suddenly smelled cinnamon cookies and hot chocolate, remembered the feeling of soft socks on hardwood floors. Grandma Helen. She used to bake star-shaped cookies, Sarah murmured, surprised by the clarity of her memory. And she had a fat cat named Mittens, Grayson completed with a smile. An orange Persian who slept by the fireplace. Sarah smiled through her tears. It was as though each photo unlocked a new door in her mind. On the last page, she found a photo of the entire family in front of the same house from the first picture. The man, the woman, the boy, now around 10, and the little girl of about 3, wearing a light blue dress and holding a teddy bear. "That was the last photo we took together," Grayson said, his voice barely above a whisper. "A week before you disappeared." Sarah stared at the photo for a long time, taking in every detail. The little girl in the image had a gap-toothed grin, looking safe and happy. There was no sign of the fate that awaited her, being torn away from her family, losing her memories, growing up with no idea who she really was. Carefully closing the album, Sarah looked at Grayson, tears shining in her eyes. "And our parents?" she asked, voice trembling with fear and hope. Grayson smiled, a smile full of promise and healing. "They're alive. They never gave up on you." The envelope arrived on a seemingly ordinary Tuesday, one that would forever change the course of 3 intertwined lives. Grayson was in his office when he got the lab's call saying the DNA test results were in. With trembling hands, he asked them to email him immediately and send a hard copy via express delivery to Sarah's address. He opened the email as soon as it arrived. His heart pounded so hard, it felt like it would burst from his chest. He read the report repeatedly, wanting absolute certainty there was no mistake. The conclusion was clear and irrefutable, a 99.998% probability of a first-degree relationship. Sarah was Amelia, his sister, missing for 20 years, was alive. Grayson buried his face in his hands, allowing himself, for the first time in years, to cry openly. Tears of relief, joy, grief for lost years, and hope for the years to come. When he finally composed himself, he picked up the phone again. "Miranda, cancel all my appointments for the rest of the day and for the next 2 days as well." "Sir, but the meeting with the investors..." "Reschedule. This is more important." He grabbed his car keys and drove to Sarah's tiny apartment, feeling strangely calm despite the emotional storm inside him. He'd rehearsed this moment 1,000 times over the past few days, imagining exactly what he'd say, how he'd react. But now, about to deliver the news that would change everything, words felt inadequate. Sarah answered the door with Ellie by her side. Both looked as though they'd been waiting for him, Ellie's face glowing with anticipation, Sarah's eyes betraying sleepless nights. "It's here," he said simply, holding the envelope. "The results." Sarah went pale, gripping the doorframe for support. "And what does it say?" Grayson hesitated, suddenly aware of the gravity of the moment. This wasn't just a medical result. It was confirmation of an identity, a reconnection to a lost past. "Maybe we should go inside," he suggested softly. Sarah nodded, stepping back to let him in. The small apartment felt even tinier, as though the walls were closing in to witness a moment that transcended the humble space. "It's positive," Grayson finally said, his voice steady despite his emotion. "You're Amelia, my sister." Sarah raised her hand to her mouth, stifling a sob. Her legs gave out, and she sank onto the edge of the bed. "So it's true," she whispered, barely audible. "All of it is true." Ellie moved closer to her mother, gently stroking her hair. "Mom, are you sad?" Sarah hugged her daughter, tears flowing freely. "No, sweetheart, Mom's just surprised. It's a lot to take in at once." Grayson sat down beside them, respectful of Sarah's space, but wanting to be near. He opened the envelope and took out the report. "Everything is here," he said, offering her the papers. "If you want to see the details." Sarah took the documents with shaking hands, her eyes scanning the lines of scientific terminology that meant little to her. But at the bottom of the page, in bold letters, was the conclusion that changed everything. "Result positive for first-degree relationship probability, 99.9998%. "It's so strange," she said after a long silence. "Part of me always knew there was more. Something beyond the memories I could reach, like a distant echo I couldn't decipher." "What now?" Grayson asked gently. Sarah looked up, her green eyes, the same as the Cole family, shining with a mixture of fear and hope. "I don't know," she admitted. "It's all so overwhelming. I'm afraid I won't live up to everyone's expectations. That I won't be the Amelia they were hoping for." "Nobody expects anything," Grayson assured her, choosing his words carefully. "You're no longer that 3-year-old girl, just like I'm no longer that 11-year-old boy. We've all changed, grown. What matters is that we have a chance to reconnect, to build something new. And your parents..." "Our parents," she corrected herself quickly. "They'll want to see me, meet Ellie. But what if... They just want to know you're okay," Grayson interrupted softly. "They've held on to that hope for 20 years. Anything beyond that is a gift." "I'm scared," Sarah admitted. "Scared I won't be able to fill this 20-year gap." "Scared of disappointing them, or you?" Grayson took her hand, a simple gesture of connection. "It's not about what we lost," he said, voice firm with conviction. "It's about what we can build together from now on." Ellie, who had been quietly listening, approached Grayson. "So this means you really are my uncle now?" He smiled, the first genuine smile since arriving. "Yes, Ellie, I'm really your uncle." The little girl clapped her hands in excitement. "That's so cool. Can I tell everyone on our street?" Sarah and Grayson laughed, the tension in the moment eased by Ellie's innocence. They spent the rest of the afternoon talking about the past, about the 20 lost years, and about their next steps. Grayson explained that their parents were eager to see her, but understood if she needed more time. "I'll bring you to them when you're ready," he promised. No rush. As the sun began to set, painting the tiny apartment in golden light, Grayson looked around at the peeling paint, exposed wiring and drafty windows. "Before we go any further," he said, pulling an envelope from the inside pocket of his jacket, "I have something for you too. Grayson, you've already done so much. Please," he insisted gently, "this is important to me." Sarah took the envelope, puzzled. Inside was a golden key and some documents. "What is this?" she asked, confused. "A fresh start," he answered simply. "A place for you two to begin this new phase." Sarah looked at the documents and went pale. They were deeds to a house, registered in her name. "I can't accept this," she said immediately, trying to give the papers back. "It's too much, Grayson. Please, Sarah." "Amelia," he added, testing the name that felt strange yet right for both of them. "It's not charity. It's family. It's what siblings do. They take care of each other. But a house. It's nothing extravagant," he explained. "It's comfortable, in a safe neighborhood, near good schools. I was thinking of Ellie, how nice it would be for her to have a yard, her own bedroom." "Uncle Grayson bought a house for us," Ellie asked, eyes wide with excitement. "With a yard and trees." "Yes, sweet girl," he replied, smiling at his niece. "It even has the perfect spot for a swing if your mom lets you have one." "Please, Mom." "Please," Ellie begged, jumping up and down. Sarah looked from the papers to Ellie, then back to Grayson. In his eyes, she saw not pity or charity, but genuine love, the same love she was beginning to remember from her early childhood. "It's in your name," Grayson continued. "No conditions, no strings attached. It's yours to do whatever you want. If you'd rather sell it and use the money for Ellie's education, that's fine too. I just want you both to have a chance at a dignified new beginning." Tears sprang to Sarah's eyes, but this time they felt different, not from fear or confusion, but from overwhelming gratitude. "Can I at least see the house before I decide?" she asked, smiling slightly. "Of course," Grayson replied, visibly relieved. "We can go right now if you'd like." 15 minutes later, they pulled up in front of a modest two-story home in a quiet, tree-lined neighborhood. It wasn't large or luxurious, but it had undeniable charm. Pale yellow siding, bright white windows, and a stone walkway leading to the front door. "This is it," Grayson announced, opening the low gate for them. Ellie immediately ran to the small front yard, thrilled with the open space after years spent in a cramped apartment. "There's a swing," she yelled, pointing to the side yard where a simple swing hung from a sturdy branch of an old tree. Sarah stood on the walkway, emotions so intense she could hardly process what she was seeing. Grayson approached her, offering the golden key. "Would you like to go in?" he asked gently. With trembling hands, Sarah took the key and walked to the door. It fit perfectly in the lock, and the door opened onto a warm foyer with light wood floors and neutral-toned walls. "I kept the decor minimal so you could make it your own," Grayson explained, leading her inside. "But I made sure you had all the essentials." The living room was spacious, with an electric fireplace and comfortable sofas. The kitchen, modern yet cozy, had all the necessary appliances. Upstairs, there were 3 bedrooms, a master for Sarah, one for Ellie, already painted a soft lavender, her favorite color, and a small office that could easily be turned into another bedroom. "This whole room is just for me?" Ellie asked, spinning around in the space that was 3 times larger than the area she'd slept in before. "Can I decorate it how I want?" "Of course you can, sweetheart," Sarah said, touched by her daughter's joy. When they finished the tour, they returned to the living room. Ellie ran off to explore the backyard, leaving the adults alone. "Grayson, I don't even know where to begin to thank you," Sarah said, her voice breaking with emotion. "There's no need," he replied simply. "Seeing you two happy is all the thanks I need. Besides," he added with a small smile, "I have 20 years of missed Christmas and birthday gifts to make up for." Sarah laughed, tears still running down her cheeks. She looked at the key in her hand, small, golden, and shining. It was more than the key to a house. It was the key to a new life, a second chance. "For the first time," she said, voice barely above a whisper. "I feel like I have a place I can call home, a place that's truly mine." "It's yours," Grayson confirmed. "Forever." Outside, they could hear Ellie's carefree laughter as she explored the yard, discovering every corner and hidden treasure of their new world. It was the sound of childhood joy, innocence and hope. In that moment, bathed in the golden glow of the setting sun streaming through the large windows, Sarah knew that no matter what challenges lay ahead, everything would be okay. The lost girl had finally found her way home. The clock on the wall showed 6:15 a.m. when Ellie woke up. She didn't need an alarm. Excitement had kept her in a light sleep all night, as though her small body feared oversleeping on her big day. She jumped out of bed, still rubbing her eyes, and ran to the window. Outside, the sky was just beginning to lighten, promising a sunny day. On the dresser beside her bed, neatly folded and ready, was her new uniform. A pleated navy blue skirt, a white shirt bearing the St. Clair Academy emblem, white socks, and brand new black shoes that had never been worn. Next to them was her backpack, also new, a bright shade of blue she'd chosen herself, already packed with notebooks, colored pencils, a pencil case, and her lunchbox. Ellie touched the uniform reverently, as if it were precious and fragile. For a child who'd never owned new clothes, only hand-me-downs or donations, this uniform represented far more than just something to wear to school. It was a symbol of a new life, of possibilities she had never imagined. When Sarah entered the room to wake her daughter, she was surprised to find Ellie already dressed, fumbling with the navy blue tie that completed the outfit. "You're up early, sweetheart," Sarah smiled, helping her with the tie. "Excited for your big day?" Ellie nodded, her eyes sparkling. "I'm going to learn everything, Mom, everything. I'll make friends, meet teachers, and breathe," Sarah laughed, tucking a stray strand of hair behind Ellie's ear. "You'll have time for all that and more." While they prepared breakfast in the bright and spacious kitchen of their new home, Sarah couldn't help thinking about how everything had changed so quickly. Just a month ago, they were in a cramped apartment with no prospects, no pastime, no clear future. Now they had a comfortable, safe home, and Ellie was about to have something Sarah had always dreamed of giving her, a good education. Ellie's enrollment at St. Clair, one of the best schools in the city, had been arranged by Grayson the previous week. It hadn't been simple. Sarah's lack of proper documentation complicated any bureaucratic process. But Grayson, with his influence and determination, had overcome every hurdle. "It's a family matter," he'd told the principal when she questioned the unusual situation. "My niece deserves the best education possible, and we'll provide any needed documents as we go." The Cole name, associated with one of the city's most respected families, opened doors. But it was Ellie's natural intelligence, demonstrated in an informal assessment, that truly impressed the school staff. "She has extraordinary potential," the academic coordinator had said after testing her. "It's amazing how much she's learned without formal schooling." Right at 7:30 a.m., the doorbell rang. Grayson, looking impeccable in his dark suit, had insisted on joining them for this special occasion. "Uncle Grayson," Ellie exclaimed, running to hug him the moment Sarah opened the door. "Look at my uniform. Don't I look pretty?" "The prettiest student I've ever seen," he replied, spinning her around. "Ready for your big day?" "Absolutely," she declared, with a conviction that made the adults smile. The drive to the school was filled with Ellie's excited chatter, peppered with questions about how classes would be, whether teachers were nice, if there would be other new students like her. From the passenger seat, Sarah watched her daughter in the rear-view mirror, feeling a mix of pride and a twinge of melancholy. This was a world she had never known, a real first day of school, belonging to a school community, having the chance to develop her full potential. St. Clair was housed in an old, elegant building, with ivy climbing its red brick walls and a large courtyard where children of all ages gathered, some playing, some chatting in small groups. Seeing so many students, Ellie instinctively squeezed Sarah's hand. "What if they don't like me?" she whispered, a fleeting moment of insecurity breaking through her usual confidence. "It's impossible not to like you," Grayson replied, kneeling down to her level. "Just be yourself, little one. Everything else will fall into place." At the school entrance, they were greeted by the coordinator, who smiled warmly at Ellie. "Welcome to St. Clair, Ellie," she said, extending her hand. "We're very happy to have you with us." Ellie glanced at her mother for reassurance. Sarah nodded, encouraging her. "Come on, I'll show you your classroom and introduce you to your new classmates," the coordinator continued. "Your teacher, Ms. Bennett, is excited to meet you." The moment had come for goodbyes. Ellie hugged her mother tightly, then her uncle, before turning to follow the coordinator. Halfway there, she paused and ran back. "Did you forget something?" Sarah asked, checking Ellie's backpack. "No," Ellie whispered. "I just wanted to say I love you, Mom." "And I love you too, Uncle Grayson." With that, she turned and followed the coordinator, her small but determined steps carrying her through the school doors, her bright blue backpack bouncing lightly on her shoulders. Sarah watched until Ellie disappeared inside, feeling Grayson come up beside her. In silence, he took her hand and squeezed gently, a simple gesture of comfort and connection. "She'll be fine," he said softly. Sarah nodded, unable to speak, silent tears streaming down her cheeks. They were not tears of sadness, but rather an emotion so profound words failed to capture it. "This is why," she finally said, voice trembling, "for moments like this that I never gave up, even on our worst days, when we had nothing to eat, when everything seemed impossible, so that one day Ellie could have what I never did." Grayson squeezed her hand again, understanding completely. "And now you both have a new chance," he said. "Her family." Sarah looked at him, this man who had come into her life so unexpectedly and changed everything. Her brother, her friend, her support. "Yes," she agreed, returning the hand squeeze. "Her family." Together, hands intertwined, they gazed at the school courtyard where Ellie, the little girl who had brought them together, was beginning a new journey, no longer alone, no longer helpless, but surrounded by the love of a family that, against all odds, had found one another again. The weeks following Ellie's first day at school were filled with adjustment and discovery. She bloomed in the academic environment like a plant finally given sunlight. Her teachers never ran out of praise for her intelligence and enthusiasm. Ellie devoured knowledge with a hunger that impressed everyone, as though she wanted to make up for every minute of the years she hadn't been in formal education. For Sarah, the days followed a different pace. Though the new house was welcoming and secure, she sometimes found it strange, like she was living in a dream she might awaken from any moment. She spent hours arranging their few belongings from the old apartment, alongside new furniture and items, trying to create a space that felt truly her own. But one thing weighed more heavily with each passing day: the pending meeting with her biological parents. Grayson regularly brought updates from them, how anxious they were to see her, how they had prepared her old room, how they counted the days until their family was complete again. Each piece of news stirred a mix of hope and apprehension in Sarah. One Saturday afternoon, while Ellie colored at the kitchen table and Sarah prepared dinner, Grayson showed up unannounced. This was common now. He simply dropped by, bringing small gifts or just his calm presence. "I brought dessert," he said, holding up a box of apple pie from the local bakery, "and I wanted to talk to you about something." Sarah recognized the seriousness in his tone and nodded, gesturing for him to sit. Ellie, immersed in her drawings, merely waved at her uncle without looking up. "It's about Mom and Dad," Grayson said once Sarah was seated. "They asked if you feel ready to meet them. They'd completely understand if you need more time, but they're anxious," Sarah finished with a small smile. "I understand." Grayson studied her face for any signs of discomfort or fear. "What about you? How do you feel?" Sarah took a deep breath, weighing the question. In the past few weeks, more memories had returned, fragments of her childhood, flashes of family moments. Her mother's face as she sang lullabies, her father's large hands lifting her high. They were sweet memories, bringing a sense of belonging she had never felt before. "I think I'm ready," she finally said. "I'm still scared, of course. It's huge, all of this. But I feel like I've waited too long already." "They've waited too long. They know you're different now," Grayson assured her. "They don't expect you to be the little girl who disappeared. They just want to meet the incredible woman you are." Sarah smiled, touched by his words. "When would it be?" They suggested next Sunday. A quiet lunch, just the five of us. Nothing too formal or overwhelming. Sarah looked at Ellie, who was now watching them curiously. "What do you think, honey?" "Want to meet your grandparents next Sunday." The girl's eyes widened with excitement. "Your parents? The ones you found after so long?" "Yes, sweetie. My parents. Our parents." Ellie clapped her hands. "Yes, I want to. Can I bring my school uniform to show them and my drawing notebook?" "Of course," Sarah laughed. "They'll love to see it all." "Then it's settled," Grayson concluded, visibly relieved. "Sunday at noon. I'll come pick you up." The days leading up to the reunion blurred by. Sarah found herself rehearsing in her mind how it would go, what she'd say, worried she might be too emotional to speak. At night, she dreamed of her childhood home, waking up with the vivid feeling that she had just been there. Meanwhile, Ellie dedicated herself to a secret project, spending hours bent over sheets of paper with colored pencils strewn about, forbidding Sarah or Grayson to look until it was finished. "It's a special gift," she explained mysteriously, "for the new grandparents, so they'll know our family." On the eve of the meeting, while Sarah arranged their clothes, Ellie finally revealed her project, a large, colorful drawing of 5 people holding hands, a woman, a little girl, a tall man, and an older couple. Above them, in bright, careful letters, she had written, "Our complete family." "It's beautiful, Ellie," Sarah said, her voice trembling with emotion. "They're going to love it." "You think they'll like me?" Ellie asked, suddenly unsure. "They'll love you," Sarah assured her with a hug. "Just like I do." On Sunday morning, Sarah's nerves peaked. She changed clothes 3 times, unsure what was appropriate for meeting the parents you haven't seen in 20 years. No guidebook existed for such a situation. She finally settled on a simple light blue dress, pinned her hair into a casual bun, and applied only light makeup. She wanted to look presentable but still be herself, the Sarah she had become, not some idealized version of the lost Amelia. Grayson arrived promptly at noon, also looking a bit anxious despite his attempts to hide it. During the car ride to his parents' house, he tried to make small talk about the weather, Ellie's progress at school, random news, but the tension was palpable. "It's okay to be afraid," he finally said when they stopped at a red light. "They are too." "They are?" Sarah asked, surprised. "Of course. They're terrified you won't like them, that you'll think they're too old or too different. They're afraid of saying the wrong thing, of pushing you too hard." Sarah had never considered that possibility, that her parents might also feel insecure, vulnerable. She'd only imagined their joy, not the complex emotions the reunion would stir in all of them. "It'll be all right," Ellie piped up from the back seat with childlike optimism. "We're a family now." Families stick together. Sarah and Grayson exchanged a grateful look, both comforted by the girl's unwavering confidence. After 20 minutes, they pulled into a quiet, tree-lined neighborhood of well-kept homes with flower gardens. Grayson slowed down in front of a 2-story house with cream-colored siding and dark wood accents. A stone walkway led to the front door, surrounded by bright flower beds. "This is it," he announced, parking. "The house where we grew up." Sarah peered out the window, feeling a wave of recognition. The paint was different, and the garden had changed, but the structure was the same, and the large oak tree in the yard was still there. The familiarity made her heart race. "I remember that tree," she whispered. "You used to help me climb it." Grayson smiled, clearly moved. "Yeah, Mom would worry, but Dad always said it was good for building courage. Let the girl explore the world, he'd say. For a moment, neither spoke. They were both lost in memories, Grayson's vivid and intact, Sarah's fragmented but still powerful. "We're ready," Sarah finally said, turning to Ellie. "Shall we meet your grandparents?" Ellie nodded, clutching her drawing and the small backpack of school items she insisted on showing them. The three made their way to the front door. With each step, Sarah's heart pounded harder. When they reached the door, she had the surreal sense of stepping into a moment that transcended time, where past and present merged. Grayson rang the bell. Rapid footsteps sounded inside the house. The door swung open, revealing a tall man with hair now completely gray, but the same intense green eyes as Grayson and Sarah. Beside him stood a woman of average height, her brown hair streaked with silver, her face etched with years but still lovely, bearing the same gentle expression Sarah was beginning to recall from her memories. Time seemed to freeze. No one spoke, not even Ellie, usually so talkative. It was as if everyone understood how sacred this moment was, too precious for idle words. It was the woman, Elizabeth Cole, who finally broke the silence, her voice trembling. "Amelia. My Amelia." Sarah felt hot tears spill down her face, no attempt to hide or restrain them. "Mom," she said simply, the word sounding strange, yet perfectly natural. As if an invisible barrier had been broken, Elizabeth took a step forward and embraced Sarah. It was a long, tight hug filled with 2 decades worth of longing and love. Thomas, the father, joined them, his strong arms encircling them both, tears freely streaming down his lined face. Grayson stood beside Ellie, both watching with emotion. The little girl clung to her uncle's hand, her eyes wide at the intensity of the scene. When they finally pulled apart, Thomas cradled Sarah's face in his large hands, studying every feature as though memorizing it anew. "You're beautiful," he said, his voice rough with emotion. "As beautiful as your mother." Sarah smiled through her tears. "You two haven't changed as much as I thought." "Time moves slowly when you're living on hope," Elizabeth said, not letting go of her daughter's hand. Her gaze then fell on Ellie, who watched them with curiosity. "This must be our granddaughter." Ellie took a step forward, suddenly shy. "Hi," she said softly. "I'm Ellie. I made a drawing for you." Thomas knelt painfully by the look of it to meet her eyes. "We're so happy to meet you, Ellie. May I see your drawing?" With pride, Ellie handed over her artwork. Thomas and Elizabeth examined it with genuine admiration, pointing out little details and smiling at the colorful figures representing their newly reunited family. "This is the most beautiful picture I've ever seen," Thomas declared solemnly. "We'll hang it on the living room wall, in the place of honor." Ellie's eyes sparkled with joy. "Really?" "Absolutely," Elizabeth confirmed. "It should be where everyone can see it." "I brought my backpack too," Ellie continued, encouraged by their warm reception. "I want to show you my notebooks and my art from school." "We can't wait to see all of it," Elizabeth said. "But first, how about we go inside? We made a special lunch with all the favorite dishes you liked when you were little, Amelia. I hope you still like them." Sarah felt warmth flood her chest at the mention of her given name. It wasn't uncomfortable, just different. Like Amelia and Sarah were 2 parts of the same person, finally beginning to merge. "I'm sure I'll love it," she replied, smiling. "And please, call me Sarah for now. It's the name I've known all these years." "Sarah," Thomas echoed, nodding. "That's a lovely name." They stepped inside, and once again Sarah was engulfed by an overwhelming sense of familiarity. The layout was the same, though some decor had changed. In the living room above the fireplace, she noticed something that made her pause. A framed photo of her as a child, surrounded by partially melted candles. "Every year, on the anniversary of your disappearance, we lit candles," Elizabeth explained, following Sarah's gaze. "To light your way home." Sarah couldn't form a response, the emotion tightening her throat. But she didn't need to. The moment spoke for itself, love overflowing in silent understanding. They had lunch in the sunny dining room, where the table was set with the best China Eye fresh flowers, everything arranged to make the occasion special. Conversation flowed surprisingly well, largely thanks to Ellie, who charmed her grandparents with tales of school and endless curiosity about the past. Later, while Ellie shared her notebooks with Thomas, who listened attentively to every detail of her lessons, Elizabeth led Sarah upstairs to a closed door at the end of the hallway. "We kept your room," Elizabeth said hesitantly. "Not exactly how it was. We updated it a bit over the years, imagining how you'd grow. If it's too strange, we don't have to go in." "I want to see it," Sarah reassured her gently. The room was a combination of the past and an imagined present. The walls were still painted the same soft green Sarah had started to remember. The bed was larger, obviously replaced as they pictured Amelia growing. A bookshelf contained children's books on the lower shelves and more advanced volumes, fiction, history, science, on the upper shelves. On the desk stood picture frames with digital age progressions of how Amelia might look at 10, 15, 20. "Her private detective helped us with the age projections," Elizabeth whispered, "for the missing posters." Sarah stepped closer to the images, studying this alternate life she never lived. It was surreal and heartbreaking, seeing who she might have been, the adult her parents had envisioned as they searched year after year. "We never lost hope," Elizabeth said, tears falling silently. "Not for a single day. Even when people told us to move on, to accept it, we just knew, deep down, that you were alive somewhere." Sarah hugged her mother, feeling her frail body tremble. "I'm sorry for everything you went through," she whispered. "For all the suffering." Elizabeth pulled back, cradling Sarah's face. "No, sweetheart, we're sorry we couldn't protect you, that we let it happen." "It wasn't your fault," Sarah insisted. "Look, it turned out okay in the end. We're here, together. That's what matters now." When they returned downstairs, they found Thomas, Grayson, and Ellie seated on the living room floor, looking through an old photo album, the same one Grayson had shown Sarah weeks earlier. Several others were stacked nearby, filled with Cole family memories. "Grandpa's showing me pictures of Mom when she was little like me," Ellie squealed. "And Uncle Grayson had such funny hair." Everyone laughed, and Sarah joined them on the floor, forming a circle around the scattered photos, past, present, and future, blending into a perfect moment of harmony. Gazing at the joyful faces of her parents, at the pride in Grayson's eyes, and at Ellie's uncomplicated happiness, Sarah felt a certainty she had never known. Despite the lost years, despite all the pain and struggle, she had never stopped being loved. And now, finally home, she could begin to build the future she'd always deserved. October arrived, bringing a particularly sunny Sunday. One of those days that feels like a gift amid the changing seasons. The sky was an impossible shade of blue, not a cloud in sight, and a gentle breeze rustled the leaves, some already turning gold. It was the perfect day for a picnic in the park. Thomas had suggested they celebrate, not just the reunion of the family, but also Ellie's first month at school, where she continued to amaze her teachers with her hunger for knowledge. They chose Golden Park, the very place holding so many of Sarah and Grayson's childhood memories. It felt like closing a circle, returning to where they had shared so much before fate tore them apart, and the same spot where Sarah had recently recalled her first flash of memory, seeing Grayson push Ellie on a swing. Elizabeth had prepared a lavish picnic basket, full of everyone's favorite foods. Turkey and cranberry sandwiches that Sarah had discovered she adored, caramel apples that made Ellie roll her eyes with delight, the lemon pie Grayson always requested for his birthday dessert, and oatmeal cookies. Thomas pretended not to love but always sneaked into his pockets. Now sitting on a checkered blanket spread over the grass, Sarah surveyed the scene with a sense of contentment she never thought possible. Nearby, Thomas was teaching Ellie how to fly a simple kite they'd made the day before. The child's face shone with focused joy, her eyes fixed on the colorful kite dancing against the blue sky. "More string, Grandpa," It wants to go higher, Ellie shouted, while Thomas patiently explained the air currents and balance. Not far away, Elizabeth and Grayson packed up the picnic leftovers. Sarah smiled at the sound of her mother's laughter, a noise that, day by day, became more reassuring and familiar. There were still moments when Sarah felt like a visitor in this new life, as though she were playing a part in a show about a happy family. But then, one look from Grayson, one touch from her mother, one call from her father, and everything fit perfectly, as if it had always been that way. The past weeks had been a roller coaster of emotions. Their initial reunion, so full of tears and embraces, gave way to a period of mutual rediscovery. Sarah learned about her parents every day, not just the memories slowly returning from her early childhood, but who they were now, how 2 decades of searching had changed them. Thomas, once a career-driven businessman, had retired early to devote himself fully to finding his daughter. He became active in organizations that supported families of missing children, turning his own pain into help for others. Elizabeth, a former literature professor, had never returned to full-time teaching. Instead, she wrote children's books, stories about a little explorer traveling the world and always finding her way back home. "It was my way of keeping you alive," she explained to Sarah with tears in her eyes. "Wherever you were, I imagined you on your own adventures." Elizabeth's stories had now become Ellie's favorites at bedtime. "What are you thinking about?" Grayson asked, interrupting Sarah's thoughts as he sat beside her on the blanket. Sarah smiled at her brother. Their relationship was also evolving, finding a balance between the lost childhood bond and the new adult friendship they were building day by day. "How unpredictable life is," she answered honestly. 2 months ago, Ellie and I were alone in a tiny apartment, with no prospects, no past, no certain future. And now you have a family," Grayson finished, following her gaze to where Ellie was sprinting after the kite Thomas had let go of on purpose so she could rescue it. "Yes," Sarah agreed, "a family." It was a word that still carried a magical ring to her. Family. For so many years, her family had been Ellie alone. Now, suddenly, there were parents, a brother, a history, roots. "You know what Mom told me yesterday?" Grayson went on, absent-mindedly pulling at blades of grass. "That for the first time in 20 years, she slept through the night without getting up to check if the phone was working, just in case someone called with news about you." Sarah felt her chest tighten. "It still hurts to think about all they went through." "They'd say it was worth it," Grayson replied simply. "Every minute of waiting, every sleepless night, it was all worth it for this." Across the lawn, Elizabeth had joined in the kite fun, helping Ellie reel in the string. The grandmother's grey-streaked hair shone under the sun, her face, usually marked by the seriousness carved by years of grief, now relaxed and carefree. "Mom, Uncle Gray," Ellie shouted, waving frantically. "Come help us, the kite wants to fly even higher." Grayson stood and offered Sarah a hand. "Shall we? Miss Kite is calling," he joked. Sarah took his hand, allowing him to help her up. Together, they walked toward the rest of the family, who waited for them with expectant smiles. As they drew closer, Sarah noticed something that made her grin. On Ellie's slender wrist, the colorful beaded bracelet, blue, red, yellow, green, purple, shimmered in the breeze as she gestured excitedly, explaining how they should position the kite. That bracelet, an exact replica of the one Grayson had made for Amelia so many years ago, had been the thread that brought them all together again, a talisman that, in some mysterious way, kept their connection alive even when all seemed lost. Sarah touched her own wrist, where she now wore an identical bracelet, Grayson's gift to her the day they moved into their new home. "To complete the circle," he had said. Thomas noticed them approaching and flashed a broad smile. "Just in time," he said, handing the kite string to Sarah. "Ellie thinks you're the next one who should make our friend soar." "Me? I'm not sure I remember how—" "It's easy, Mom," Ellie exclaimed, hopping excitedly beside her. "You just have to feel the wind." The kite knows what to do, we just help it. Her simple wisdom made Sarah laugh. She took the string, allowing Ellie to guide her hands. The kite responded at once, climbing higher into the clear sky. "I'm doing it!" Sarah cried out, surprised by the childish glee she felt. "You were always good at kites," her mother remarked, her smile filled with memories. "Even when you were so little." There, holding the kite's line in her fingers, surrounded by family, both old and new, Sarah felt a wave of peace so profound it nearly stole her breath. Life wasn't perfect. They all had scars and questions still unanswered about how she'd been separated from her birth family. There were difficult days and delicate topics that forced them to tread lightly. But there was also this: a sunny Sunday in the park, a kite dancing in the sky, Ellie's laughter mingling with the voices of her grandparents and uncle. There was belonging, there was love. In a sudden rush, Sarah let out more line, allowing the kite to climb even higher, almost disappearing into the endless blue of the sky. "Careful not to lose it," Thomas warned, ever protective. Sarah smiled, feeling the gentle pull of the line, a perfect balance between holding on and letting go, protecting and allowing freedom. "I won't lose it," she said with a confidence straight from her soul. "We're all connected now." As if to confirm her words, Ellie raised her arm, making the colorful beads on her bracelet shimmer under the sunlight, the same sun that lit their smiles, warmed their hearts, and promised many more Sundays like this to come. The bracelet that had never broken had kept its promise, to protect, guide, and reconnect. Now changed from a symbol of loss into one of reunion, it would continue to remind them that true love, like the invisible thread linking their hearts, could stretch across time and distance but never break.